The morning sky on Kepler 442b painted itself in shades of orange and purple as Dr. Kim Dae-ho stepped out of the research station. The twin suns were rising slowly over the rocky landscape, casting long shadows across the alien terrain. He pulled his environmental suit tighter around his body and checked the oxygen levels on his wrist display. Another day of sample collection in the wastelands awaited him. Kim had been working on this remote planet for 3 years now. The research station was small, housing only 12 scientists and support staff. Their mission was simple, but important. Study the planet's unique ecosystem and determine if humans could one day live here safely. So far, the results were not promising. The soil was toxic, the air was barely breathable, and the native creatures were either deadly or completely alien to human understanding. As Kim walked toward the designated collection area, he noticed something unusual in the distance. A dark shape lay motionless near a cluster of twisted metal trees. At first, he thought it might be debris from one of the old mining operations that had failed on this planet decades ago. But as he got closer, his heart began to race. It was not debris. It was a living creature. Kim approached carefully, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency beacon on his belt. The creature was small, no bigger than a human child, but its features were distinctly alien. Dark scales covered parts of its body, while other areas showed pale, almost human-like skin. Its limbs were thin and fragile, and Kim could see it was breathing, but barely. He knelt down beside the creature and felt his breath catch in his throat. This was not just any alien creature. The bone structure, the facial features, the way its chest rose and fell with each labored breath. This looked like a hybrid, part human, part something else, part human, part Korthok. The Korthok were humanity's greatest enemy. For 20 years, they had attacked human colonies, destroyed entire settlements, and killed thousands of innocent people. They were brutal, violent, and showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. Kim had seen the footage from the attacks, had read the reports from survivors. The Korthok were monsters, but this creature lying before him was just a child. A dying child. Kim activated his communicator and called back to the research station. "Dr. Park, this is Kim. I need you to prepare the medical bay immediately." "What did you find out there, Dae-ho?" came the voice of Dr. Park Soo-jin, his research partner and closest friend on the station. Kim looked down at the small creature, watching as its chest struggled to rise and fall. "I found something that is going to change everything." 20 minutes later, Kim carried the unconscious creature into the research station. The moment he entered the medical bay, he could see the shock on his colleagues' faces. Dr. Park Soo-jin stepped back, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Security Chief Lee Hyun-woo immediately reached for his weapon. "Dae-ho, what have you done?" Park whispered. "That is a Korthok." "No," Kim said firmly, laying the creature gently on the medical table. "Look closer. Really, look." Dr. Park So-young, the station's chief medical officer, approached the table with her scanner. She had been working in xenobiology for years and had seen many strange creatures, but nothing like this. As she ran the scanner over the small body, her expression changed from fear to curiosity. "The bone density is consistent with Korthok physiology," she said slowly. "But the neural pathways, the brain structure, there are significant human elements here. This is definitely a hybrid." Lee Hyun-woo stepped forward, his weapon still drawn. "I don't care what it is. The Korthok are our enemies. This thing could be a weapon, a spy, or worse. We need to eliminate it now before it can cause any damage." Kim moved to stand between Lee and the creature. "This is a child, Hyun-woo. Look at it. It's dying. It was abandoned out there in the wasteland, left to die by its own kind. How can you call that a weapon?" "Because that's exactly what they would do," Lee replied, his voice hard. "They would abandon a failed experiment, let us find it, let us take it in, and then use it against us when we least expect it." Dr. Park Soo moved closer to the table, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial fear. "The question is, how did this hybrid come to exist? Human and Korthok biology are completely different. Creating a stable hybrid should be impossible." "Not impossible," Dr. So-young said, continuing her scans. "Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Someone would have needed access to both human and Korthok genetic material, advanced laboratory equipment, and years of research. This wasn't an accident. Kim looked down at the small creature. Its breathing was becoming more labored, and its skin was taking on a grayish color. We can discuss how it came to exist later. Right now, we need to decide if we're going to save its life or let it die. The regulations are clear, Lee said. Any contact with Korthok forces must be reported immediately to Earth Command. They will send a military response team, and this creature will be eliminated for the safety of all human colonies. And if we don't report it, Park asked quietly, then we're committing treason, Lee replied. We're putting every human life at risk for the sake of an enemy creature. Kim felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He thought about the destroyed colonies, the families torn apart by Korthok attacks, the friends he had lost in the war. Every logical part of his mind told him that Lee was right. This creature was dangerous, unknown, and potentially deadly. But when he looked at the small form on the medical table, all he could see was a child that had been abandoned, rejected, and left to die alone. Dr. So-young Kim said finally, "What do you need to save its life?" The medical officer looked up from her scanner. "I can stabilize its condition, but it will need ongoing care. Its hybrid biology makes treatment complicated. Some human medicines might be toxic to its Korthok physiology, and we don't have access to Korthok medical knowledge. But you can do it?" "I think so, yes." Kim looked around the room at his colleagues. Park looked worried but curious. Lee looked angry and frustrated. Dr. So-young looked determined and ready to face the medical challenge. "Then we save it," Kim said. "We save this child, and we see what happens next." Lee shook his head. "This is a mistake, Daeho, a mistake that could cost us everything." "Maybe," Kim replied, watching as Dr. So-young began connecting the creature to various medical devices. "But letting a child die because of what its parents did would cost us something even more important. It would cost us our humanity." As the medical bay filled with the sounds of life support equipment, Kim made a silent promise to the small creature fighting for its life. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they would face, he would make sure this child had a chance to choose its own path. Nature might have rejected this hybrid child, but humanity would not. 3 days had passed since Dr. Kim Daeho brought the hybrid child into the research station. The small creature lay in the medical bay, connected to machines that monitored every heartbeat, every breath. Dr. Park So-young had worked around the clock to stabilize its condition. But the child remained unconscious and fragile. Kim stood by the medical bed, watching the rise and fall of the small chest. The creature looked so peaceful now, nothing like the terrifying Korthok warriors he had seen in military footage. Its face was a strange mix of human and alien features, but there was something innocent about it that made Kim's heart ache. "The station's AI has been running calculations all night," Dr. Park Soo-jin said as she entered the medical bay. She carried a datapad in her hands, and her expression was troubled. "Arya has analyzed every possible outcome of keeping this creature alive." Kim turned to face his research partner. "And what did she conclude?" "Arya calculates a 97.3% probability that raising this hybrid will result in catastrophic consequences for humanity," Park replied, reading from her datapad. "She recommends immediate termination and disposal of the specimen." "Specimen," Kim repeated, his voice bitter. "Is that what we're calling children now?" Before Park could answer, Security Chief Lee Hyanwoo entered the medical bay. His face was grim, and he carried an official-looking document in his hand. "I've been in contact with Earth Command," he announced. "I haven't told them about our situation yet, but I've reviewed all relevant military regulations." Kim felt his stomach tighten. "And Regulation 47 Alpha is very clear," Lee said, holding up the document. "Any contact with Korthok forces or Korthok biological material must be reported within 72 hours. Failure to report constitutes treason against the Human Colonial Alliance. The penalty is life imprisonment or death." "This isn't biological material," Kim protested. "This is a living child, a Korthok child," Lee corrected. "A potential weapon, a security risk. My duty is to protect this station and everyone on it." Dr. So-young looked up from her medical equipment. "Actually, that's not entirely accurate," she said quietly. All three turned to look at her. She had been so focused on her work that they had almost forgotten she was there. "What do you mean?" Park asked. Dr. Soyoung approached them, holding her own datapad filled with genetic analysis reports. "I've been studying the creature's DNA structure for the past 3 days. What I've found is remarkable." She activated a holographic display that showed the complex double helix of the hybrid's genetic code. "Look at this," she said, pointing to specific sections. "The Korthok DNA is present, yes, but it's not dominant in the areas that matter most." Kim studied the display. "I don't understand. What areas?" "The sections that control empathy, reasoning, social bonding, and emotional development," Dr. Soyoung explained. "In those critical areas, the human DNA is completely dominant. This creature will think like a human, feel like a human, and develop social connections like a human." Lee frowned. "That could be intentional, a way to make us trust it." "No, doctor." Soyoung shook her head. "The genetic markers show this was natural development, not artificial manipulation. Whoever created this hybrid, they didn't control which traits would be dominant. It was pure chance that the human characteristics won out in the areas of personality and emotional development." Park looked at the genetic display with new interest. "So what you're saying is that this creature will have the physical advantages of Korthok biology, but the emotional and mental characteristics of a human." "Exactly," Dr. Soyoung confirmed. "Enhanced strength, improved senses, better resistance to toxins and radiation, but with human empathy, human morality, and human capacity for love and friendship." Kim felt a spark of hope. This could be the key to understanding both species better, maybe even the key to ending the war. "Or it could be the perfect weapon," Lee countered. "Strong enough to kill us all, but trusted enough to get close to US first." "You're not listening," Dr. Soyoung said firmly. "The genetic markers for aggression, territorial behavior, and pack hunting instincts come from the Korthok side, but they're suppressed by the human DNA. This creature will be naturally inclined toward cooperation, not conflict." The debate was interrupted by a soft sound from the medical bed. All 4 adults turned to see that the hybrid child's eyes had opened. They were large and luminous, a pale blue color that seemed to glow in the medical bay's soft lighting. The child looked around the room with obvious confusion and fear. When its gaze fell on the 4 adults standing nearby, it tried to sit up but was too weak. Dr. Soyoung immediately moved to the bedside. "It's okay," she said gently, adjusting the medical equipment. "You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you." The child looked at her with those strange, glowing eyes. It opened its mouth as if to speak, but only managed a weak, croaking sound. "Don't try to talk yet," Dr. Soyoung said. "You've been very sick. You need to rest and get stronger." Kim approached the bed slowly, not wanting to frighten the child. "Can you understand us?" he asked softly. The child nodded weakly, its eyes moving from Kim to the others in the room. "Do you remember how you got to this planet?" Kim continued. The child's expression became sad, and tears began to form in its glowing eyes. It shook its head and made another soft sound, almost like a whimper. "It's been abandoned," Park said quietly, "left to die in the wasteland." Lee remained skeptical, "Or it's programmed to act helpless, to gain our sympathy." But Kim was watching the child's face, seeing the genuine fear and confusion there. This was not the calculated behavior of a weapon or spy. This was simply a frightened, abandoned child who had no idea where it was or what would happen to it. "What's your name?" Kim asked gently. The child opened its mouth again, and this time managed to make a sound that might have been an attempt at words, but it was in no language any of them recognized. "It probably doesn't speak human languages," Dr. Soyoung observed. "We'll need to teach it. We'll need to do a lot of things," Kim said, making his decision, starting with giving it a name. Lee stepped forward. "Daeho, think about what you're doing. This decision will affect all of us. If Earth Command finds out we're harboring a Korthok hybrid without reporting it, we'll all face court-martial." Kim looked at his colleagues, then back at the child on the medical bed. The small creature was watching them with those luminous eyes, clearly sensing the tension in the room, even if it couldn't understand the words. "Then we don't tell Earth Command," Kim said finally. "We keep this child's existence secret until we can prove that it poses no threat." "That's treason," Lee said flatly. "No," Kim replied. "That's mercy. That's compassion. That's what makes U.S. human, instead of the monsters we're fighting against. He moved closer to the medical bed and looked down at the hybrid child. "Your name will be Taman," he said softly. "It means great and clever in my language. You're going to grow up here with us, and we're going to teach you to be everything your genetics say you can be." Park looked worried. "Are we really going to do this? Raise a Korthok hybrid in secret?" "We're going to raise a child," Kim corrected. "A child who deserves a chance to choose what kind of person it wants to become." As if understanding the kindness in Kim's voice, the child Taman reached out with one small hand. Kim took it gently, surprised by how warm and human it felt despite the slight scaling on the skin. "Welcome to our family, Taman," Kim whispered. And in that moment, the research station on Kepler-4 for to be became something more than a scientific outpost. It became a home where one abandoned child would learn that love could overcome fear, and where humanity would prove that their greatest strength was not their weapons or technology, but their capacity to choose compassion over hatred. 5 years had passed since Dr. Kim Dae-ho first carried the dying hybrid child into the research station. The small medical bay had been transformed into a bedroom, decorated with drawings that Taman had made and toys that the research team had built for him from spare parts and materials. Tae-min stood at the window of his room, watching the twin suns rise over the rocky landscape of Kepler-4 for to be. He was no longer the fragile creature that had been found in the wasteland. At 5 years old, he stood as tall as a human child of 8, with lean muscle visible beneath his pale skin. The dark scales that covered patches of his arms and back caught the morning light, creating patterns that shifted like living art. "Good morning, Taman," Dr. Kim said as he entered the room. "Are you ready for today's lessons?" Taman turned from the window and smiled. His luminous blue eyes lit up with excitement. "Yes, Papa Kim. Are we going to learn about the weather machines?" Today, Kim had become like a father to Taemin over the years, and the child had naturally started calling him Papa Kim. The title made Kim's heart warm every time he heard it. "We are," Kim replied. "But first, Dr. Park wants to show you something new in the communications room." Taemin nodded eagerly and followed Kim through the corridors of the research station. The other team members had become accustomed to seeing the hybrid child around the station, though it had taken time for some of them to overcome their initial fears. In the communications room, Dr. Park Soo-jin was working at a control panel that looked impossibly complex. Wires and circuits were scattered across the workbench, and several warning lights were flashing red. "The main communication array is broken again," Park explained to Taemin. "We've been trying to fix it for 3 days, but the damage is too deep inside the system for our tools to reach." Taemin studied the problem with the serious expression he always wore when presented with a challenge. "May I try to help?" Park smiled. Over the years, she had learned that Taemin had an incredible talent for understanding complex machinery. His enhanced senses allowed him to hear problems in electrical systems, and his smaller hands could reach places that adult humans could not. "Of course," Park said, "but be very careful. The power levels in there could be dangerous." Taemin nodded and carefully removed the outer casing of the communication array. He closed his eyes and listened carefully to the sounds coming from deep inside the machine. After a moment, he opened his eyes and reached into the system with his small hands. "There," he said, making a quick adjustment to something deep inside the machine. The connection was loose, and there was a small piece of metal blocking the signal path. Park activated the system, and immediately the warning lights stopped flashing. The communication array hummed back to life, working perfectly. "Amazing," Park said, shaking her head in wonder. "You fixed in 5 minutes what we couldn't repair in 3 days." Taemin beamed with pride. "I like helping. It makes me feel useful." As they left the communications room, they encountered Lee Hoyan-woo in the corridor. The security chief had slowly warmed up to Taemin over the years, though he still maintained some distance. He watched the child with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Another successful repair?" Lee asked. "The communication array," Kim confirmed. "Taemin has such a gift for understanding technology." Lee nodded thoughtfully. "His abilities are remarkable. Sometimes I wonder if we fully understand what we're raising here." That afternoon, Taemin joined a group of children in the station's recreation area. 3 families lived on the research station, and their children had become Taemin's closest friends. Today they were playing a game that involved chasing each other around the large room. Tae-min ran with the other children, but he was careful to control his speed and strength. He had learned early that his hybrid abilities made him much faster and stronger than normal human children. If he wasn't careful, he could accidentally hurt someone. "Tag, you're it," shouted Eunicio, a 7-year-old girl who was one of Taemin's best friends. She touched his arm and ran away laughing. Tae-min chased after the group of children, making sure to run slow enough that they could escape if they tried hard enough. He was about to tag Jinwoo, a 6-year-old boy, when Jinwoo suddenly tripped and fell hard on the metal floor. Jinwoo cried out in pain, holding his knee where blood was starting to show through his torn pants. Taemin immediately stopped the game and knelt beside his friend. "Are you okay?" Taemin asked, his voice full of concern. "It hurts," Jinwoo said, tears streaming down his face without thinking. Taemin reached out to help Jinwoo stand up, but in his concern for his friend, he forgot to control his strength. He lifted Jinwoo too quickly and too forcefully, causing the boy to cry out again, this time from Taemin's grip on his arm. "Ow, Taemin, you're hurting me," Jinwoo said. Tae-min immediately let go, his face filled with horror. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Dr. Soyoung arrived at that moment, having heard the commotion. She quickly examined Jinwoo's injuries, a scraped knee and some bruising on his arm where Taemin had grabbed him. "It's not serious," she assured everyone. "Just some scrapes and bruises. Jinwoo will be fine." But Taemin was not fine. He backed away from the group, his luminous eyes filled with shame and fear. "I hurt him," he whispered. "I didn't want to hurt him, but I did." Kim appeared in the recreation area and quickly assessed the situation. He could see the distress on Taemin's face and understood immediately what had happened. "It was an accident," Kim said gently, approaching Taemin. "You were trying to help." "But I hurt him anyway," Taemin said, his voice breaking. "What if I hurt someone worse next time? What if I can't control it?" That evening, Taemin sat alone in his room, staring out the window at the alien landscape. He had refused to come to dinner, despite Kim's gentle urging. The incident with Jinwoo had shaken him deeply. Kim entered the room quietly and sat on the bed beside Taemin. "Do you want to talk about what happened today?" Taemin didn't look away from the window. "Am I a monster, Papa Kim?" The question hit Kim like a physical blow. "What? No, Taemin, you're not a monster. You're a good, kind child who made a mistake." "But I'm different," Taemin said. "I look different. I'm stronger than I should be. Sometimes I can hear things that others can't hear, or see things that others can't see. And today, I hurt my friend because I can't control what I am." Kim moved closer to Taemin and put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Being different doesn't make you a monster. Your strength, your senses, your abilities, these are gifts. But like any gift, you need to learn how to use them properly." "What if I can't learn?" Taemin asked, finally turning to look at Kim. "What if I keep hurting people?" "Then we'll keep teaching you," Kim said firmly. "We'll practice every day until you have perfect control. We'll learn together." Taemin was quiet for a long moment. "The other children looked scared of me after I hurt Jinwoo. What if they don't want to be my friends anymore?" "Fear often comes from not understanding," Kim said. "Tomorrow, we'll talk to Jinwoo and the other children. We'll explain that you have special abilities that you're still learning to control. True friends will understand and forgive. And if they don't understand," Kim smiled sadly, "then we'll find new ways to help them understand. That's what families do, Taemin. We don't give up on each other." The next morning, Taemin found Jinwoo in the recreation area. The boy was sitting alone, reading a book, with a bandage on his knee. "Jinwoo," Taemin said quietly, "I'm really sorry I hurt you yesterday." Jinwoo looked up from his book. "My mom explained to me that you're special, and that sometimes special people have to work harder to control their abilities. I never want to hurt you or anyone else," Taemin said. "I was just trying to help." Jinwoo smiled. "I know, you always try to help everyone. That's why you're my best friend." Relief flooded through Taemin. "Really? You still want to be my friend?" "Of course," Jinwoo said, "but maybe next time you can help me up more gently." Taemin laughed, feeling like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I promise, I'm going to practice being more gentle. Every day." As the two boys talked and played together, Kim watched from the doorway of the recreation area. He saw how carefully Taemin moved now, how conscious he was of his strength and size. The incident had been painful, but it had also taught Taemin an important lesson about responsibility and self-control. Dr. Park joined Kim in the doorway. "He's learning," she observed. "Yes," Kim agreed. "He's learning to be human, even though he's so much more than human." "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Park asked, raising him here, keeping him secret. Kim watched as Taemin helped Jinwoo with a difficult puzzle, his movements careful and gentle. "I think we're giving him the chance to choose who he wants to become. That's the most human thing we can do." 10 years had passed since Taemin first opened his eyes in the research station's medical bay. Now, 15 years old, he stood nearly 6 feet tall with the lean, powerful build of his Korthok heritage combined with the gentle expression that came from his human upbringing. The research station had become his entire world, and the 12 adults and handful of children who lived there had become his family. The morning started like any other, with Taemin helping Dr. Park Sujin calibrate the atmospheric sensors. His enhanced hearing could detect problems in the equipment that the instruments couldn't measure, making him invaluable for maintenance work. "The pressure readings seem stable today," Park said, checking her data pad. "The storm system that's been building in the north seems to be moving away from us." Taemin tilted his head, listening to something beyond normal human hearing. "Actually, Dr. Park, I think there might be another storm coming from the east. I can hear the electrical activity building up about 50 kilometers away." Park checked her instruments again, but they showed clear skies in all directions. She had learned over the years to trust Taemin's senses more than her equipment. "I'll adjust our weather warnings. Thank you." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the communications room. All across the station, speakers crackled to life with an emergency broadcast. "This is Colony Ship Harmony calling any stations in the Kepler system. We have suffered catastrophic engine failure and have crash-landed on the moon designated Kepler 4 for to see. We have 200 people aboard, including 45 children. Our life support systems are failing. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need immediate rescue." Kim rushed into the communications room, followed by the other senior staff members. Lee Hyanwoo was already working at the radio controls, trying to establish better contact with the crashed ship. "Harmony, this is Research Station Alpha," Lee said into the microphone. "We have received your distress call. What is your current situation?" The voice that came back was weak and filled with static. "Research Station Alpha. Thank God you're there. We've been broadcasting for 6 hours. Our ship is badly damaged, and we're losing atmosphere quickly. The moon's surface is toxic to humans, and our emergency shelters won't last more than 24 hours. Kim looked at the other team members with growing alarm. "How far is Kepler 4 to see from our position?" "About 4 hours by shuttle," Lee replied. "But that's the problem. The moon's atmosphere is poisonous to humans, and the surface temperature is below freezing. Our rescue shuttles aren't designed for those conditions." Dr. So-young pulled up the environmental data for the moon on her data pad. "The atmosphere contains high levels of sulfur compounds and radiation. Even with our best protective suits, we could only survive on the surface for maybe an hour before the toxins overwhelmed our systems." "What about the rescue shuttles?" Kim asked. "Could they make multiple trips?" Lee shook his head. "The shuttles don't have the right shielding for that environment. The corrosive atmosphere would damage their hulls after one landing. We might be able to get one shuttle down and back up, but that would only save maybe 20 people at most." A heavy silence fell over the room as the reality of the situation sank in. 200 people were going to die, and there was nothing they could do about it. "What if I went?" Taemin said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been standing in the doorway, listening to the conversation. "What do you mean?" Kim asked. "The toxic atmosphere, the cold, the radiation," Taemin said, stepping into the room. "Those things would kill humans, but my Korthok physiology can handle much worse environments. I could survive on that moon's surface." Dr. So-young immediately began calculating on her data pad. "He's right," she said after a moment. "Taemin's enhanced metabolism and resistance to toxins would allow him to function in that environment for several hours." "But how would that help?" Lee asked. "Even if you could survive on the surface, you couldn't carry 200 people back to the shuttle." "Not all at once," Taemin admitted. but I'm strong enough to carry multiple people at the same time. With my speed, I could make dozens of trips between the crashed ship and a shuttle landing site. Kim felt his heart racing. Taemin, that would mean revealing your existence to the survivors. Once 200 people know about you, Earth Command will find out within days. I know, Taemin said simply, but 200 people will die if we don't act. How can we let that happen just to keep me secret? Lee looked conflicted. For 10 years, he had been the voice of caution, always warning about the risks of keeping Taemin's existence hidden. But now, faced with the choice between exposing their secret and letting innocent people die, he found himself supporting the rescue mission. The boy is right, Lee said finally. We can't let 200 people die to protect one secret. Dr. Park was already working on a rescue plan. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Taemin, how long do you think you would need to evacuate everyone? Taemin considered the question carefully. If I can carry 4 people at a time, and the distance between the crash site and the shuttle is reasonable, I could probably evacuate everyone in about 6 hours. That's cutting it close to their life support failure, Kim said, but it might work. Within an hour, the rescue mission was underway. Taemin suited up in a modified environmental suit that would protect him from the worst of the moon's atmosphere while still allowing his enhanced abilities to function. He boarded the shuttle with Lee and Dr. Soyoung, who would pilot the craft and provide medical support for the survivors. As they approached the moon, Taemin could see the crashed colony ship in the distance. It was a massive vessel, broken and smoking, with emergency lights flashing around its hull. The sight filled him with determination. Remember, Kim said over the radio from the research station, be careful down there. Don't take any unnecessary risks. I'll be careful, Papa Kim, Taemin replied. I promise. The shuttle landed on a flat area about 2 kilometers from the crashed ship. Taemin stepped out onto the moon's surface and immediately felt the hostile environment pressing against him. The air was thick with poisonous gases, and the ground was covered in sharp, crystalline formations that would have cut through normal boots. But Taemin's hybrid physiology handled the challenge easily. He ran toward the crashed ship at a speed that would have been impossible for a human, covering the distance in just a few minutes. When he reached the ship, he found the survivors huddled in the main cargo bay, the only section that still had functional life support. They looked up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. His tall, scaled figure in the environmental suit must have looked alien and frightening. I'm here to help, Taemin called out, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. I'm going to get all of you off this moon. An older woman, who appeared to be the ship's captain, stepped forward. Who are you? How did you get here? My name is Taemin, he replied. I'm from the research station. I know I look different, but I promise you, I'm here to save your lives. Without waiting for more questions, Taemin began the rescue operation. He carefully lifted for survivors at once, carrying them like they weighed nothing at all. The survivors were amazed by his strength and speed as he ran back toward the shuttle landing site. For the next 6 hours, Taemin made trip after trip. He carried the injured first, then the children, then the elderly, and finally the adults. Each group of survivors was amazed by their rescuers' incredible abilities, but they were too grateful to be alive to ask too many questions as the last group of survivors boarded the shuttle. Captain Sarah Chen of the colony ship Harmony approached. Taemin, I don't know what you are, she said, but you saved 200 lives today. Humanity owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Taemin removed his helmet, revealing his scaled skin and luminous eyes to the survivors for the first time. Several people gasped, and some stepped back in fear. I'm a hybrid, Taemin said simply, part human, part Korthok. But I was raised by humans, and I believe in human values. I believe that every life has value, regardless of species. The captain looked at him with wonder and respect. Then you're more human than many humans I've known. As the shuttle lifted off from the moon's surface, Taemin knew that everything was about to change. His secret was out, and soon Earth Command would know of his existence. But as he looked at the 200 grateful survivors around him, he felt no regret. He had chosen to save lives, and that choice defined who he truly was. 3 weeks after the rescue mission, the peaceful routine of Research Station Alpha was shattered by the arrival of a massive Earth Command battleship. The vessel appeared in orbit around Kepler-4 for to be without warning, its dark hull bristling. With weapons and communication arrays, Taman stood at the observation deck window. Watching the imposing ship block out one of the planet's twin suns, he had known this day would come. The moment he revealed himself to the 200 survivors of the colony ship Harmony, he had sealed his fate. They're demanding immediate surrender of all station personnel, Lee Hyanwoo said as he entered the observation deck. His face was grim, and his security uniform looked somehow smaller and less important in the face of Earth Command's overwhelming military presence. "What about the survivors?" Taman asked. "Are they safe?" "They were taken to medical facilities on Earth," Lee replied. "But not before they all gave testimony about what happened here, about you." Kim appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 other research team members. "Taman, I need you to know that whatever happens next, we don't regret our decision to raise. You saved 200 lives. That's what matters." "The transport shuttles will arrive in 2 hours," Lee continued. "They're taking all of us back to Earth Command headquarters for questioning." Tae-Min nodded slowly. He had grown up knowing that this moment might come, but he had hoped it would be further in the future. "Will I be separated from all of you?" "Most likely," Kim admitted, his voice heavy with sadness. "But we'll fight for you, Taman. We'll tell them the truth about who you really are." The next several hours passed in a blur. Earth Command Marines boarded the station and placed everyone under arrest. They were efficient and professional, but Taman could see the fear and suspicion in their eyes when they looked at him. To them, he was not a young man who had just saved 200 lives. He was a Korthok, the enemy, a potential weapon. The journey to Earth took 5 days aboard the military transport. Taman was kept in a special containment cell, isolated from Kim and the other researchers. The cell was clean and comfortable, but it was still a prison. Guards watched him constantly through reinforced windows, and he could hear them talking in hushed voices about the Korthok specimen. They were transporting Earth Command headquarters was a massive complex of buildings and landing platforms that stretched for miles across the landscape. As their transport descended toward the main facility, Taman caught his first glimpse of Earth, the planet that his human family had always described to him as home. The formal hearing was held in a large chamber filled with military officers, government officials, and scientists. Admiral Choi Min-ho, a stern man with gray hair and hard eyes, served as the presiding judge. Taman had learned that Admiral Choi's entire family had been killed in a Korthok attack 5 years earlier, making him one of humanity's most determined advocates for the complete destruction of the Korthok species. "State your name for the record," Admiral Choi said when Taman was brought into the chamber. "My name is Taman," he replied, standing straight and meeting the Admiral's gaze without flinching. "That is a human name," Admiral Choi observed. "What is your real name, your Korthok designation?" "Taman is my real name," Taman said firmly. "It's the only name I've ever had. Dr. Kim Dae-ho gave it to me when I was a child." The Admiral's expression darkened. Dr. Kim Dae-ho, who stands accused of treason for harboring an enemy agent without reporting to proper authorities. "Dr. Kim saved my life," Taman said. "He found me dying in the wasteland, abandoned by my own kind. He chose compassion over hatred, and in return, you infiltrated human society." Admiral Choi continued. "You gathered intelligence on our technology, our weaknesses, our defenses." "I helped repair machines," Taemin corrected. "I played with human children. I learned to read human books and watch human movies. I learned what it means to care about others." The hearing continued for hours, with various officials questioning Taman about his abilities, his knowledge, and his intentions. Many of them seemed convinced that he was either a weapon created by the Korthok or a spy sent to gather information for future attacks. But then something unexpected happened. Captain Sarah Chen, the commander of the colony ship Harmony, requested permission to address the hearing. "Admiral Choi," she said, standing at attention, "I speak for all 200 survivors of the Harmony disaster. This hybrid, this young man called Taman, saved all of our lives. He risked everything to rescue us from certain death." "Captain Chen," Admiral Choi replied, "you were in a desperate situation. You may not have been thinking clearly about the implications of accepting help from a Korthok hybrid." "With respect, Admiral, I was thinking very clearly," Captain Chen said firmly. We watched this young man make dozens of trips through a toxic environment that would have killed any normal human. He carried our children to safety. He was gentle with our elderly and injured. He showed more courage and compassion in 6 hours than most people show in a lifetime. Murmurs spread through the hearing chamber. Admiral Choi looked annoyed by the interruption, but Captain Chen was not finished. Furthermore, she continued, we have video recordings of the rescue operation. I request that these recordings be shown to this hearing. The video footage was extraordinary. It showed Taimin moving through the hostile environment of the moon with impossible speed and strength, but every action he took was focused on saving lives. The footage showed him carefully lifting children, supporting injured adults, and encouraging frightened survivors. This is not the behavior of a weapon or a spy, Captain Chen concluded. This is the behavior of a hero. More survivors of the Harmony were called to testify. One by one, they spoke about Taimin's courage, his kindness, and his obvious love for humanity, how he had comforted them during the rescue. But perhaps the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Jinwoo, now 16 years old, had traveled to Earth with his family, specifically to speak at the hearing. Taimin has been my best friend for 10 years, Jinwoo said, his voice steady and clear. When we were children, he accidentally hurt me once during a game. He was so upset, so ashamed, that he cried for hours. That's when I knew that he could never be a monster. Monsters don't cry when they hurt innocent people. Jinwoo continued, Taimin spent years learning to control his strength so he would never hurt anyone again. He helped all of us with our schoolwork, fixed our toys when they broke, and always shared his food when someone was hungry. He's not a Korthok warrior. He's just Taimin, and he's the best person I know. Dr. Kim was called to testify about Taimin's upbringing and development. We raised him with human values, Kim said. We taught him about compassion, justice, and the importance of protecting the innocent. Every choice he has made in his life has been to help others, never to harm them. But he possesses the physical capabilities of our enemies, Admiral Choi pointed out. His strength alone makes him a potential threat. His strength saved 200 lives, Dr. Park Soo-jin interjected. From the witness stand, his abilities could be humanity's greatest asset in understanding the Korthok and perhaps even ending this war. As the hearing continued, video footage from Taimin's childhood began to surface. The research station had maintained security recordings over the years, and these recordings showed Taimin growing up. The videos showed him playing with human children, helping injured animals, sharing meals with the research team, and always choosing kindness over violence. Piece of footage showed a 5-year-old Taimin finding an injured bird outside the research station. The video captured him carefully, carrying the bird to Dr. So-young, waiting patiently while she treated its broken wing, and then spending days feeding and caring for the creature until it was strong enough to fly away. This is not the behavior of a programmed weapon, Dr. So-young testified. This is the behavior of a child who has been taught to value all life. Admiral Choi watched the footage with a conflicted expression. Taimin could see the internal struggle in the older man's eyes. The battle between his hatred for the Korthok and the undeniable evidence of Taimin's good character. Finally, Taimin, who was given the chance to speak for himself. He stood before the assembled officials and spoke from his heart. I know that my appearance frightens some of you, he said. I know that my genetics connect me to humanity's enemies, but I also know who I am inside. I am someone who was raised by humans, who learned human values, and who chooses every day to use his abilities to help rather than harm. I cannot change what I am, Taimin continued, but I can control who I choose to be. I choose to be someone who protects the innocent. I choose to be someone who values life above all else. I choose to be human in all the ways that truly matter. The hearing chamber fell silent as Taimin's words sank in. Admiral Choi stared at the young hybrid for a long moment, and Taimin could see something changing in the Admiral's expression. This hearing is adjourned, Admiral Choi announced. The panel will deliberate and render a decision within 24 hours. As Taimin was led back to his holding cell, he caught Kim's eye in the crowd. His adoptive father smiled encouragingly, but Taimin could see the worry and fear there too. The next 24 hours would determine not just Taimin's fate, but the future of human-Korthok relations. That night, as Taimin sat alone in his cell, He thought about all the people who had spoken for him at the hearing. Captain Chen and the Harmony survivors, Jinwoo and his childhood friends, Kim and the research team who had raised him. They had shown the hearing panel that he was not defined by his genetics, but by his choices. Now he could only wait and hope that humanity would choose compassion over fear. Just as they had 15 years ago when Kim first decided to save a dying hybrid child in the wasteland. The deliberation had lasted 18 hours when the alarms began to sound throughout Earth Command headquarters. Admiral Choi Minho was reviewing testimony recordings in his office when his aide burst through the door without knocking. "Admiral, we have an emergency," Lieutenant Park Jung-soo said breathlessly. "Long-range sensors have detected a Korthok war fleet approaching the outer system. Estimated arrival time is 6 hours. Admiral Choi felt his blood turn cold. A Korthok fleet hadn't been seen this close to Earth in over 3 years. "How many ships?" 15 vessels. "Sir, including at least 3 heavy battle cruisers. It's one of the largest fleets we've ever detected." The Admiral immediately activated the emergency communication system. "All department heads to the main briefing room immediately. Initiate Defense Protocol 7 Alpha." Within minutes, the briefing room was filled with Earth Command's senior officers. The main display screen showed the approaching Korthok fleet as red dots moving steadily toward Earth. "Communications are picking up a broad-spectrum transmission from the lead ship," reported Commander Lee Min-young. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Admiral Choi ordered. The speakers crackled to life with a harsh alien voice speaking in the guttural language of the Korthok. But then the voice switched to heavily accented human speech. "Humans of Earth Command, I am War Prime Gorth of the Korthok Dominion. You have taken something that belongs to us. You will return our weapon spawn immediately, or we will take it." By force, a chill ran through the briefing room. Admiral Choi looked around at his officers, seeing his own realization reflected in their faces. "They're here for the hybrid," he said quietly. "They're here for Taimin." Down in the holding area, Taimin sat up as the alarms began to sound. His enhanced hearing could pick up fragments of conversations throughout the building, and what he heard made his heart race. The Korthok had come for him. Dr. Kim appeared at his cell door with 2 guards. "Taimin, Admiral Choi wants to see you immediately." "I know," Taimin said, standing up. "I can hear the alarms. They've come for me, haven't they?" Kim nodded grimly. "A Korthok war fleet. 15 ships." As they walked through the corridors toward the main briefing room, Taimin could see the fear on the faces of every person they passed. Earth Command personnel were running back and forth, preparing defenses, sending messages, trying to coordinate a response to the largest Korthok threat in years. In the briefing room, Admiral Choi was studying tactical displays when Taimin arrived. The Admiral looked up, and Taimin could see a mixture of anger, fear, and something else in his eyes. "They're calling you their weapon spawn," Admiral Choi said without preamble. "They want you back." "I'm not going back," Taimin said firmly. "I was abandoned by them 15 years ago. Dr. Kim and his team are my family now." "The lead ship is commanded by War Prime Gorth," Admiral Choi continued. "According to our intelligence files, he's one of their most brutal commanders. He's personally responsible for the destruction of at least 6 human colonies." Taimin felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Gorth, you know that name?" "From the genetic analysis Dr. So-young did years ago," Taimin said quietly. "She was able to identify some of my biological markers. War Prime Gorth is my biological father." The briefing room fell silent. Admiral Choi stared at Taimin for a long moment. "Your father is one of humanity's greatest enemies," the Admiral said. "And now he's here with 15 warships, demanding your return." "He's not my father," Taimin said firmly. "Dr. Kim is my father. The research team is my family. Humanity is my people." Before Admiral Choi could respond, the communications officer spoke up. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the Korthok fleet." "Put it through?" War Prime Gorth's voice filled the room again. "Humans, you have 1 hour to surrender our weapon spawn. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the price of defying the Korthok Dominion." The transmission ended, leaving the room. In heavy silence, Admiral Choi looked at the tactical display showing Earth's defensive positions. "We have 12 ships in the system," he said. "Against their 15, including heavy battle cruisers, our chances are not good." "What if we gave them what they want?" suggested one of the younger officers. If we hand over the hybrid, they might leave peacefully. Several officers murmured agreement, but Admiral Choi raised his hand for silence. He was studying Taemin's face, seeing something there that made him reconsider. "No," Admiral Choi said finally. "I've spent the last day reviewing testimony about this young man. I've watched footage of him saving 200 human lives. I've listened to children speak about his kindness, and I've seen proof of his courage and compassion." The Admiral stood up and faced the room. 15 years ago, Dr. Kim made a choice to save a dying child rather than follow regulations. Yesterday, Taemin made a choice to risk his secret to save 200 lives. Today, humanity must make a choice about what kind of species we want to be, sir. Commander Lee asked, confused. "We don't surrender our people to the enemy," Admiral Choi said firmly, "no matter what their genetics might be. Taemin has proven himself to be human in every way that matters. We protect our own." Taemin stared at Admiral Choi in amazement. "You're going to fight for me? We're going to fight for the principle that anyone can choose to be better than their origins." Admiral Choi replied, "You've shown us that nurture can triumph over nature. That's a lesson worth defending." But Taemin was shaking his head. "Admiral, you can't risk the lives of thousands of people for me. There has to be another way. What are you suggesting?" Taemin looked around the room at all the human faces staring at him. These people were willing to die to protect him, even though many of them had only learned of his existence days ago. "I want to talk to him," Taemin said. "To War Prime Gorth." "To my biological father?" "Absolutely not," Kim said immediately. "Taemin, that's too dangerous. Dr. Kim, they came here because of me. Maybe I can convince them to leave without a fight." Admiral Choi considered the proposal. "What would you say to him?" "I would tell him the truth," Taemin said. "I would tell him about the life I've lived, the values I've learned, the choice I've made to protect rather than destroy. Maybe if he sees what I've become, he'll understand that there's another way." "And if he doesn't understand?" Admiral Choi asked. "If he tries to take you by force?" Taemin was quiet for a moment. "Then I'll go with him." The room erupted in protests. Kim stepped forward. "Taemin, Mo, we won't let you sacrifice yourself." "It wouldn't be a sacrifice," Taemin said. "It would be a choice. The same kind of choice you made when you saved me 15 years ago. The same choice I made when I saved the Harmony survivors. Sometimes you have to choose what's right over what's safe." Admiral Choi looked at the young hybrid with growing respect. "You would go with them to prevent a war?" "I would go with them to try to stop this cycle of violence," Taemin corrected. "Maybe I can't change War Prime Gorth's mind, but maybe I can reach some of the others. If one abandoned hybrid can choose compassion over hatred, maybe I can teach others to make the same choice." The Admiral studied the tactical display again, then looked back at Taemin. "Very well. We'll open a communication channel. But if this goes wrong, if they try to take you by force, we fight." "Understood," Taemin said. 20 minutes later. The main screen in the briefing room flickered to life with the image of War Prime Gorth. He was a massive creature, even by Korthok standards, with dark scales and burning red eyes. When he saw Taemin standing in the human briefing room, his expression became a mixture of recognition and disgust. "So," Gorth said in his harsh voice, "the failed experiment lives. You have grown strong, weapon spawn, but you reek of human weakness." "My name is Taemin," Taemin said, stepping forward. "And you're right, I have grown strong, strong enough to save 200 human lives, strong enough to choose compassion over violence." Gorth's eyes narrowed. "You were created to be the perfect weapon against our enemies. Instead, you help them. You disgrace your heritage." "I honor my heritage," Taemin replied, "the human heritage. That taught me to value life, to protect the innocent, and to choose love over hate." "Humans are weak," Gorth snarled. "They will be destroyed, and you will help us destroy them." "No," Taemin said firmly. "I will never help you destroy anyone, but I will come with you willingly if it prevents this war." Gorth leaned forward, surprised. "You would abandon your human masters?" "I would try to show your people that there's another way to live," Taemin said. "I would try to break the cycle of violence that has defined both our species for too long." For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered in Gorth's red eyes, but then his expression hardened again. "You come to us now, weapon spawn, or we take you by force and destroy this human world as punishment for their defiance." Taemin looked around the room one last time, meeting the eyes of Kim, Admiral Choi, and all the others who had become his family. "I'll come," he said quietly, but before anyone could respond, Admiral Choi stepped forward. War Prime Gorth, you want your weapon spawn, then you'll have to go through the entire Earth Defense Fleet to get him. Admiral Taemin protested, but Admiral Choi continued. This young man has shown us what it means to choose courage over fear, compassion over hatred. If you want to take him, you'll have to prove you're stronger than the human spirit, and I don't think you are. The transmission ended, leaving the briefing room in tense silence. Outside, alarms were sounding as Earth's defense fleet moved to intercept the approaching Korthok ships. Taemin looked at Admiral Choi with amazement. "Why are you doing this?" "Because 15 years ago, a good man made a choice to save a child," Admiral Choi replied. "Today, that child became a bridge between two worlds. Tomorrow, maybe that bridge will teach both sides that we're stronger together than we are apart." As the two fleets moved toward their confrontation, Taemin realized that the real battle wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought with words, with choices, and with the hope that even the greatest enemies could learn to see each other as something more than monsters. The two fleets hung in space like deadly stars, their weapons trained on each other across the dark void. Earth's 12 defensive ships formed a protective line between the planet and the 15 Korthok vessels. On both sides, crews waited for the order to fire, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of billions. But instead of weapons fire, the silence was broken by an unexpected transmission. Taemin had requested access to the fleet's main communication array, and now his voice reached every ship in both fleets. "My name is Taemin," he said, his words carrying across the void between the opposing forces. "I am speaking to both humans and Korthak who are preparing to die for principles they believe in. But before you destroy each other, I want you to hear my story." On the bridge of the lead Korthok battlecruiser, War Prime Gorth listened with growing fury. Several of his officers moved toward the communication controls, but he raised a clawed hand to stop them. "Let the weapon spawn speak," Gorth growled. "Let him embarrass himself before both fleets." On Earth's command ship, Admiral Choi watched the tactical display while listening to Taemin's broadcast. The young hybrid stood in the communication center, flanked by Dr. Kim and the research team members who had raised him. 15 years ago, I was dying in a wasteland, Taemin continued, abandoned by my Korthok creators, rejected by the harsh alien environment that should have been my home. A human scientist named Dr. Kim Dae-ho found me and made a choice. Instead of following military regulations that demanded my destruction, he chose compassion. Taemin's voice grew stronger as he continued. Dr. Kim and his team raised me with human values. They taught me that strength should be used to protect the innocent, not to dominate the weak. They showed me that true courage comes from choosing love over hate, even when hate seems easier. I grew up playing with human children, learning human stories, and discovering what it means to care about others. When I accidentally hurt a friend during play, I cried for hours because causing pain to someone I loved was unbearable to me. That's when I knew I was not the weapon my Korthok genetics intended me to be. On the Korthok ships, some of the younger warriors shifted uncomfortably. They had been raised to believe that caring about others was weakness. But there was something in Taemin's voice that made them question what they had been taught. 3 weeks ago, I made a choice that revealed my existence to the galaxy, Taemin continued. A human colony ship crashed on a toxic moon. 200 people were going to die, including 45 children. I could have stayed hidden, kept my secrets safe, and let them perish. Instead, I chose to risk everything to save their lives. The transmission paused for a moment, and then video footage began broadcasting to both fleets. It showed Taemin carrying survivors through the hostile environment of the moon, his movements careful and gentle despite his incredible strength and speed. "Watch how he carries the children," whispered Commander Lee Min-young on the Earth Command ship. "Like they're made of glass." On the Korthok flagship, Sub-Commander Vorthok watched the footage with growing confusion. This hybrid moved with the speed and power of a true Korthok warrior, but he used these abilities to save the lives of his enemy's offspring. "This is what I learned from humanity," Taemin's voice continued over the footage. That every life has value. That protecting the innocent is more important than following orders. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose mercy over vengeance. War Prime Gorth slammed his fist on his command console. Enough of this weakness. The weapon spawn has been corrupted by human sentiment. We will take him by force and reprogram him properly. Warprim, the hybrid's abilities, are exactly what our scientists hope to create, but his moral development is completely unexpected. Perhaps we should study this phenomenon further before acting. Are you questioning my orders? Gorth snarled. I am suggesting that this hybrid represents something our people have never seen before, Vorthok replied carefully. A fusion of Korthok's strength with human compassion. Maybe there is wisdom in understanding how this came to be. Taemin's broadcast continued, and now he was speaking directly to the Korthok fleet. War Prime Gorth, you call me weapon spawn, but I am not a weapon. I am your son, and I am offering you a chance to end this war that has consumed both our peoples for decades. You are nothing to me, Gorth's voice boomed across the communication channel. You are a failed experiment, contaminated by human weakness. If compassion is weakness, then I am proud to be weak, Taemin replied. But I don't think compassion is weakness. I think it's the strongest force in the universe, strong enough to turn enemies into allies, strong enough to heal wounds that have festered for generations. On both fleets, crew members found themselves listening intently to the exchange. This was not the typical prelude to battle they had expected. I'm going to make you an offer, Taemin said, his voice reaching every ship in both fleets. I will come with you willingly, War Prime Gorth, but not as your weapon. I will come as a teacher, to show your people that there is another way to live. And what makes you think I would accept such an arrangement? Gorth demanded. Because, despite everything, you came here for me, Taemin replied. You could have simply written me off as a failed experiment. Instead, you brought 15 ships and risked war with Earth. That tells me that some part of you recognizes my value. Admiral Choi stepped forward and activated his own communication channel. War Prime Gorth, I have a counterproposal. Instead of taking Taemin by force, why don't we arrange a formal meeting? A neutral location where both sides can talk instead of fight. Humans do not negotiate with the Korthok Dominion, Gorth replied. Maybe it's time that changed, Admiral, Choi said. This young man has shown us that cooperation is possible. He has Korthok strength and human heart. Perhaps he can help both our species learn from each other instead of simply trying to destroy each other. Silence stretched across the void between the fleets. On the Korthok ships, several commanders were having quiet conversations with their crews. The footage of Taemin's rescue mission had shaken some of their fundamental beliefs about human weakness and Korthok superiority. Finally, Sub-Commander Vorthok spoke up on an open channel. War Prime, perhaps we should consider this proposal. The hybrid has demonstrated abilities that our scientists said were impossible. If there is a chance to learn from this development without further bloodshed, you speak of avoiding bloodshed. Like it is desirable, Gorth snapped. We are warriors. Battle is our purpose. But what if our purpose could be something greater? Vorthok asked. What if instead of just being warriors, we could be builders, creators, protectors of life instead of destroyers? Other Korthok voices began to join the conversation. Young warriors who had grown tired of endless fighting, older commanders who had lost too many friends in battle, scientists who were curious about the hybrid's unique development. I have lost 3 sons to this war, said battle leader Korvac from one of the smaller ships. If there is a chance that this hybrid can show us a path to peace, should we not at least listen? Peace is for the weak, Gorth insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Taemin's voice cut through the debate. War Prime Gorth, you say that peace is for the weak, but it takes much more strength to choose forgiveness than it does to choose revenge. It takes more courage to build than to destroy, and it takes more power to love than to hate. Love, Gorth spat, human foolishness. Is it? Taemin asked. Love made Dr. Kim strong enough to save an enemy child. Love made me strong enough to risk everything to save strangers. Love made Admiral Choi strong enough to defend me, even though I share genetics with his greatest enemies. If that's foolishness, then I choose foolishness over wisdom. For several long minutes, the 2 fleets hung in space while crew members on both sides processed what they had heard. Then, Unexpectedly, War Prime Gorth himself spoke. Weaponspawn, if I were to agree to this meeting, what would you hope to accomplish? I would hope to show both sides that we're stronger together than apart, Tommen replied. I would hope to prove that understanding is more powerful than fear, and I would hope to give both our species a chance to evolve beyond the hatred that has defined us. Another long silence. Then Gorth made his decision. Very well, we will meet at the neutral station in the Altair system. But know this, Weaponspawn, if this is some human trick, if you attempt to deceive us, the consequences will be severe. The only thing I will attempt to do is show you the truth, Tommen replied. 3 days later, representatives from both fleets met at the abandoned research station in the Altair system. The meeting room was carefully arranged with equal numbers of humans and Korthok, with Tommen sitting between the two groups. For the first time in decades, humans and Korthok sat at the same table without weapons drawn. The initial discussions were tense and filled with suspicion. But gradually, something began to change. Tay-Min told his story in detail, showing the Korthok delegates footage of his childhood, his education, and his development. He demonstrated his abilities, but more importantly, he demonstrated his values. You see, he said to the Korthok delegation, I have all the physical advantages of our species, but I choose to use them for protection rather than domination. This is not weakness. This is evolution. Some of the younger Korthok delegates were visibly moved by what they saw. Subcommander Vorthok asked thoughtful questions about human child rearing practices and educational methods. Your people teach cooperation from childhood, Vorthok observed. Our people teach competition and dominance. But your method seems to produce stronger individuals in the end. The talks continued for days. Not all the issues were resolved, and not all the delegates were convinced. Warprim Gorth remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, watching his son with an expression that was impossible to read. But progress was made. Small agreements were reached about prisoner exchanges, ceasefire zones, and scientific cooperation. Most importantly, both sides agreed to establish a permanent diplomatic station where future talks could be held. As the meetings concluded, Tommen made an announcement that surprised everyone. I want to create a sanctuary world, he said. A place where hybrid children like me can be raised safely, where refugees from both sides can find shelter, and where humans and Korthok can learn to work together. And where would this sanctuary be located? Admiral Choi asked. Kepler-4 for to be, Tommen replied. The world where I grew up, it's harsh enough that only the most dedicated would choose to live there, but it's also isolated enough that both sides could feel safe sending people there. War Prime Gorth finally spoke, and you would oversee this sanctuary. I would help establish it, Tommen said, along with Dr. Kim and anyone else from both sides who believes in the possibility of peace. Gorth studied his biological son for a long moment. You truly believe that natural enemies can become allies? I believe that anyone can choose to be better than their origins, Tommen replied. You taught me that, in a way, by abandoning me. You forced me to find a new family, a new identity, a new purpose. I became something neither fully human nor fully Korthok, but something new, something better. For the first time since their reunion, something like pride flickered in Gorth's eyes. Perhaps, he said quietly, the weaponspawn has exceeded even our highest expectations. 6 months later, the sanctuary world of Kepler-4 for to be was home to over 500 residents from both species. Hybrid children played together under the light of twin suns, while their parents worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible just a year earlier. Dr. Kim, now elderly but still energetic, served as the sanctuary's chief administrator. He often sat on the observation deck in the evenings, watching Tommen teach a new generation of children about cooperation, understanding, and the power of choosing compassion over fear. Do you think we've really changed anything? Park Soo-jin asked one evening as she joined Kim on the observation deck. Kim watched as Tommen helped a young Korthok child repair a broken toy while a group of human children waited patiently for their turn. Look at them, he said. A year ago, those children would have been raised to see each other as monsters. Now they're learning to see each other as friends. But the war hasn't ended, Park pointed out. There are still battles, still hatred on both sides. Change doesn't happen overnight, Kim replied, but it starts with individuals making different choices. Taemin made the choice to save 200 lives. Admiral Choi made the choice to defend. Him War Primgorth made the choice to negotiate instead of attack. And now these children are making the choice to play together instead of fight. As if sensing their conversation, Taemin looked up from the group of children and waved to Kim and Park. His luminous eyes were bright with happiness, and his scaled skin caught the light of the setting suns. Nature rejected him, Kim said softly. His own kind abandoned him. But humanity chose compassion, and in doing so, we created something beautiful. We created hope. Park smiled as she watched the children laugh together. Maybe that's humanity's real strength, not our weapons or our technology, but our ability to see potential where others see only problems. And our willingness to love those who are different from us, Kim added, even when they're supposed to be our enemies. As night fell over the sanctuary world, the sounds of laughter and friendship echoed across the landscape. It was the sound of a new generation learning that the greatest victories are won not through conquest, but through understanding. And in the center of it all was Taemin, the abandoned child who had grown up to become a bridge between worlds, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is simply the choice to care about others, regardless of where they come from or what they look like. The war between humans and Korthok would continue for years to come, but it would never again be total. There would always be places like Kepler-4 to be, where former enemies learned to see each other as family, and where the future was being written by children who knew that love was stronger than hate. In the end, nature had not rejected the beasts. Heir, humanity had chosen compassion, and in doing so, had transformed not just one abandoned child, but the destiny of two entire species.